Sin always costs us more than what we want to pay, and it always takes us further than what we want to go.
Whenever, at a young age, parents got divorced, and there was, some little scars that kind of had added up.
I'm Graham Wright. We're here today to talk about our recovery program. This program is designed for men that struggle with inappropriate sexual behavior. And our goal is to help them recognize what's going on in their own life and that they're running to something that's inappropriate instead of running to the Father when life gets hard. When I'm struggling with depression, anxiety, when I get a review that I don't necessarily like and care for. And so when life gets tough, that's when we run to things that are inappropriate. And oftentimes what we don't understand is that the fact that that starts at a very young age. And so as I learn to cope with life at a young age, that starts this neurological pathway that creates this process of inappropriate behavior that leads to, James 1:15. Desire, when it's conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin fully grown brings forth death. And so the desire to not hurt, the desire to not be wounded, the desire to cope with life is not a bad desire. But what it brings forth is sin when it's done inappropriately. And then that brings forth eventually death in many different ways. Not necessarily physical death, but other types of deaths that are in our world. And so we have a program that helps go from acknowledging that I have a problem to praising God for what He's doing in our life and in the whole process between. Of going from I'm broken, and now I'm going to recognize my brokenness. I'm going to embrace my brokenness. I'm going to throw myself at the throne of Christ. I'm going to work as a process and a system along with other men like yourselves. And then from there, I'm going to see God do some amazing things in my life. He's going to restore my heart back to Him. He's going to give me the capacity to see my other brothers and become vulnerable, become known, become exposed and accountable. Possibly for the first time in my life, I'm going to be able to recognize that I can be empathetic with the loved ones in my life that I wasn't able to see before because life was all about me in the midst of my addiction. And then as God starts to change our heart and as we start to experience this new capacity of love and being empathetic, then I start to get downwind of my own sin and I see the opportunity for God to continue to change my heart. And that's where this restoration process really starts to begin. And so we're going to talk about the journey from, again, my addiction to God's redemptive story today. And so I'll start off with the way my life looked before acknowledging that I had a problem. My wife and I always thought growing up that when I got married that this struggle that I had would just go away. Because I thought it was all about the action, right? It was about the pornography. It was about sex. And then when I got married, it just would stop because I'd be able to have as much sex as I want, be able to look at my wife like I wanted to, whenever I wanted to, and life would just be great. Well, what I found out 45 days in is that's not the case, right? After about 45 days, some of the newness wore off, but it wasn't even the newness that wore off as much as it was, again, the patterns that I had created inside my brain because of all these years of doing the same thing. They said, hey, look, we haven't gone away yet. And when you had that bad argument with your wife, guess who's still here ready to take you in and let you do whatever you want, however you want, in that inappropriate way. And so I know that for me, prior to confessing my sin to my wife and disclosing to her everything, life was about lying, was about manipulation, the problem was never me. I mean, things would be blowing up around me and it was always somebody else's problem. It was you that created the issue. It was you that started this. It was you that said that. And oftentimes I was the common denominator. And so here I am trying to protect my lie, my sinful self, and I'm blaming everybody else for that, including my wife and my daughter. One of the worst places I've ever been is my wife and I were having a bad argument one night, and she just said, "Look, I'm going to bed. You take care of Maddie." And Maddie probably was about a year and a half old, and so we were still putting her to bed. Well, I wanted to be acting out. I didn't want to be putting Maddie down. And our precious little girl knew that there was this strife that was just going on inside of me, anger. And I was trying to put her to sleep. I was trying to rock her to go to sleep. And 30 minutes in, 45 minutes in, an hour in, she's still crying. She's not happy. And she can just feel me getting angry and angrier. And that night ended with me putting my fist through the wall next to her bed because I was so mad because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Sin always costs us more than what we want to pay, and it always takes us further than what we want to go. And that was recognized that evening. And so for me, prior to disclosure, my life was creating chaos in the lives of others around me. And that ended with my wife and I almost divorced. She finally said, look, I'll go to counseling. Because I kept telling her she was the problem. She needed to go to counseling. She finally said, look, I'll go to counseling, but you're coming with me. And so I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I knew that I did not want to be the chaos in my life, in my family's life. And so I said, look, in my heart of hearts, I said, I need to be honest here, and I need to really move forward with this in full honesty. And so I answered all the questions that the counselors asked us, which included, are you having an affair? Are you looking at pornography? What are you looking at? Intervals, all that kind of stuff. Because my desire was to be done with this. Because I knew that if something didn't change, the death that James is talking about was about to happen in my marriage. So 3 days before we went to our first counseling session, I disclosed everything to Kristen and joined a recovery program similar to ours. And that started this path of healing. That was almost 15 years ago. And by the grace of God, we are still married today, almost 21 years in. Our kiddos are beautiful and amazing. Our relationship today is, it's like it never had been. In fact, I'm gonna love to, we're gonna hear your honeymoon story here in a minute that we're excited about 23 years in. And so let's start with Andrew. Andrew, I mean, I kind of shared with you what was going on in my life prior to disclosure. What did that look like in your relationship with your wife before disclosure?
Yeah, I'd say unfortunately there was not disclosure, there was discovery. But before that, it looked a lot like compartmentalization, like you said, protecting my own lie, really kind of building this mirage and putting on like a mask every day that, I was okay. I was going to make sure everybody else was okay. Make sure she had no idea that like I either had this struggle, that I was hurting, I was lying. I mean, really just kept everything in its own little buckets. And yeah, so I think whenever, at a young age, parents got divorced, and there was, some little scars that kind of had added up. Saw pornography and masturbation at the first time at 12 years old. And that just kind of led to this kind of, I'd say, lifetime journey up until this point, of just, acting out whenever life got tough. And like you said, I think, it'll cost you everything. It led me to, acting out, seeking women outside my marriage, gambling. I mean, you name it. I mean, I was going to the depths of the world to find ways to, make myself feel good, but to really make sure I was covering everything up. But December 2021, everything kind of got blown up. And kind of same thing. Wife was saying, I'm pregnant. I'm never going to let you see my kid. I'm going to take our dogs. I'm going to take our house. Like, you can hit the road. So, we had that 2 or 3 days where it was just D-Day, right? So, but then we kind of got into some counseling together, and we went together, had a proper disclosure with our counselor, went through everything, and, she got asked the question she wanted to ask, and, the truth she wanted to know. So kind of that, beforehand was just, it was rough. I think it took it blowing up, and I think I'm at that point now where I can look back and say I'm so glad God intervened when he did, because if I would have kept doing it, I had the opportunity to, make right before I had kids. And so I'm super thankful that God gave me that opportunity.
Heath, what about your story?
I got like a double story.
You do?
Yeah, I get to do it twice, unfortunately. I think my first marriage, got married 25 and was already into all the porn and masturbation, and that was due from pain from childhood. My sister abused me growing up. We had sex together several times, and so I learned. I was 10 to 12. Learned very quickly and early. Some things were firing in my brain that weren't supposed to fire, and through that, then all of a sudden you start to realize that feels really good. All that dopamine hit, it really impacts the structure of how your brain is operating. I think I've learned that now. I didn't realize it at the time, obviously. So then you seek it out. I just sought it out constantly, seeking it out. Ended up getting married at 25, which is about 25 years ago. And then got discovered within 5 years, I guess, right after the birth of our second daughter. And my world blew up because I was not that person at all. I denied ever even being enticed by any pornography or masturbation. And so once that got figured out, went in through a program that was similar to ours, more probably 12-step oriented specifically, but a little bit of faith-based stuff, Celebrate Recovery stuff, and held on, kind of white-knuckled for years. Ended up not being enough to save the marriage, and then I decided the smartest thing to do was to go back, because that was obviously going to help me get through the pain of a very contentious divorce.
Go back to your addiction.
That's right. Sorry, yeah. Go back to the addiction, because that fixes everything. Yeah. And so it's that picture of, the alcoholic looking for the drink or whatever you want. It's just, you just dive back in and you go hard. And so I went hard. And then ended up finding a woman that is beautiful, my now wife. And about 3 months after we got married, maybe 4 months after we got married, 6 months after we got married, discovery happened with her of texting other women and deleting them, being inappropriate with other women, deleting texts, deleting phone messages, and obviously looking at porn regularly while driving. Any chance I could. So then we had just started at the Ridge, and this is now 3.5 years ago. And we had just started at the Ridge, and so we found you through a couple different avenues, and then started in the group, and have been completely sober and clean and free of any of those daggers, hooks, whatever you want to call them, sin, I guess, free of the prison. Yeah.
Jeremy, what did it look like when either you chose to go to your precious wife or she found out what was going on? Tell us about the learning of what was going on in your life.
With us, it was something she discovered. I didn't bring it to her. She discovered it when I was in a place that she didn't feel was suitable for her to bring to my attention, that she'd made that discovery. I was just going through some life changes, and she didn't want to present to me what she had discovered. She thought maybe this was temporary. This is something that I'm in a different state of mind. She was making excuses for herself because her husband, who conveyed and portrayed himself to be someone that he ended up not being, couldn't be this guy. So I think she was able, to a degree, to dismiss it for a period of time. That led to her medicating her own way to do things that she thought would numb her pain, because I wasn't strong enough to come out of the shadows and share with her what I was struggling with, what I'd struggled with long before she had any idea. Her discovery of my problem wasn't a new problem. It was a 20-year-old problem that I brought into our marriage. And, I had moments of sobriety, periods of time where I'd white-knuckled it and I'd have accountability partners with guys at church, and we'd hold each other accountable, but we didn't all have the same walk or struggle. So yeah, mine coming out was her confronting me after I was berating her for a struggle that she was going through. And yeah, I hit my knees, and in a matter of a second, it was probably just a fleeting second, her discovery of me was the biggest relief I've ever felt in my life, because I knew now was the day I have to get help. At the same time, I thought, wow, is my marriage going to last? Because I knew her opinions of pornography was infidelity. It was I was betraying her, and she had every right in the world to pick up and walk out. But she didn't. She stood strong, and she stood by me. Her struggles continued. Ours did too. But yeah, a couple days later, contacted the church, got a hold of Graham, and the rest isn't history, because recovery isn't recovered, it's recovery.
Amen.
So I look forward to being with you guys for a long, long, long time.
Yeah. Emotionally, how do you feel like this affected you guys emotionally? The addiction. What do you think, Austin? Let's throw this over to you.
I guess emotionally it was very draining, because kind of like how you were saying, just like having this thing be your source of comfort and not relying on anyone else. I had a background of being in a Christian home, being in a private Christian school, going to church, that kind of thing. The main thing that I really struggled with was just hypocrisy. It's just, how could I be a follower of Jesus, but then still have this thing on the side that I still go to almost every single night? And emotionally, it really wrecked me to the point where it's like, am I even saved? Like, how could I bring this to God if I can't get rid of it? Like, if it was any other type of emotion, I feel like I could have conquered it on my own, but I feel like with this type of sin, it's just, you need that emotional stability with a community around you. And for me personally, yeah, it was just very draining, because I would just turn everything off in terms of cares about my family, cares about my friends, even through the church. I'll put on the face and go back home and just act out. But yeah.
Well, it's like it's your best friend, right? So you protect it at all costs, and you look forward to it, and you do whatever you can to make sure that it's going to be happy. Like it has a room, it has a space, it has a place in your heart so that it can flourish. I mean, you nurture this thing that is literally sin. And I think trying to wrap your head around that it's still kind of mind-boggling. It doesn't make sense, other than the fact that it's the thing that's bringing you comfort, right? Yeah.
I think living in the sin in the moment, giving in to what we know is sin, and it brings depression and anxiety and hypocrisy, and you're not going to be able to become the full man God intended you to be with that owning you, because it owns you. But I don't think living in the sin, I realized it as much as I do now looking back, where I've released that. And like I said, it's recovery. I'm not recovered, but that sin doesn't live with me. I don't wake up and think, it's not my first and second or last thought of the day. It just isn't anymore. So being what I would say somewhat delivered from that sin, I can look back and realize, oh my gosh, why didn't I identify and move forward?
Yeah, what took so long?
Yeah, what took so long? Yeah.
Yeah, I think of like the unavailability. Like emotionally, I was so unavailable for others. Like specifically my wife. Where now it's like I can be emotionally available. I was so worried about what I was going to do. Protecting myself, protecting everything around me. Like I didn't really care, if I was like empathetic or, was connecting emotionally with somebody. We joke about it. Like, I think my wife said the other day, is like, I don't think she had seen me cry in the first, whatever, what would have been like 11 years of knowing each other.
Wow.
And now it's like I cried watching my daughter at her swim lessons last week. So I just think of that just truly not emotionally available at all
Yeah.
during that whole, process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that oftentimes we are so emotionally stunted we don't recognize, we don't even know it, right? We don't know that we're not feeling because this is just life. Life has always kind of just been this way, and so I don't know what I don't know. But when you're on the other side of it, and when you're crying at your daughter's swim meet, and you're feeling that, maybe not for the first time, but because you've been feeling it for a while now, but you're able to look back at that and go, why didn't I do this so much longer, so much further back? Because I've missed so much. That's one of my biggest regrets is the time. I prided myself on that I never spent money on my addiction. And I didn't look at it as an addiction. I prided that I never spent any money on this thing, right? But what it stole from me was so much time with my family, so many emotional memories with them, so much joy and excitement on little things like that. Something where you're actually able to feel an emotion of a fun time with your family, where we were just so numb with, I was.
Well, and even to challenge that, if somebody's watching and thinking the same thing, as far as the money piece, like challenging that of how much productivity are you losing every single day? I
Absolutely.
mean, the amount of money I could have made, I mean, is just ridiculous. So you are actually costing the potential, right?
sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so discovery, you got found out, you got discovered, right? Same thing, twice. Yeah, that's tough. So, okay. So what was life like? I'm discovered, found out. What was that conversation? I mean, what was that conversation like with your wife?
Yeah.
When you knew that, okay, there's no turning back. It is what it is. Was it fractured? Was it complete? Were you still holding some things back thinking, well, it'll be better if I don't tell her everything? Kind of what was going on in your mind and what did that look like? Jeremy, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm relieved and terrified at the same time. That 500-pound gorilla was off my back.
Do you feel like you shared pretty completely right out of the gates?
No. I think there's a willingness because I encouraged her to ask questions. And, I mean, I was honest. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. I mean, you can't deny what's been discovered, and she's
Oh, I did.
Giving you.
I can
Left and right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't deny it. I said, ask me whatever question you want. I'll be completely honest, and she didn't want to, and that's where our story may be a little bit different than some of the other guys. Full disclosure was given a couple of years later in a counselor's office, and it was kind of under a certain pretense that we set forth together that we would agree to disclose certain things, but
Which in all honesty is actually one of the best ways of doing it, right? Doing it the way I did it is not what we recommend. Doing it in a safe environment where both parties involved have a counselor there ready to help them process through and work through it is absolutely the best way to do that. So doing it at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night after a screaming match, don't do that. Some of us may have done that, and that is the worst way to do it. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, my willingness to share whatever she wanted was offered to her, but I think she knows me best, and she knew that she wanted me to kind of sit in my own sin, and you're going to deal with this, and you're going to go find some help, and you're going to take. She didn't own any of it because she didn't deserve any of it, and she had the candor and grace to know of herself that this wasn't something that she created. It was brought to her. So, yeah, I'm not sure why our story unfolded the way it did without, discovery to her full understanding of where my thoughts and minds were, but they got there.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, yeah, my wife found out. She'd just come home from a weekend, I think bachelorette trip. Just random text message that I had kind of brushed off, and that kind of made her, start going private eye and start digging in. And I mean, up front, yeah, it was pretty much just lying and just kind of holding my ground on everything. And then she kept, prodding, kept asking, and then yeah, I think like probably 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, kind of just fully confronted. I was like, I know, like, let's be truthful now. And so that's when it started to kind of unfold of, yeah, I mean, pornography, masturbation, other women, sensual massages, I mean, gambling addiction at that time. I mean, everything. But I still think it was a lot at first, but then I think as like the adrenaline and kind of the cloud of the moment started to wear off, I think there was a trickle effect of a few other things of disclosing over the next week. We got into counseling pretty quickly, like about 2 weeks into it. And that's when he kind of sat down and was like, hey, like, we're going to get with her, we're going to get questions, we're going to figure out what all you want to know. I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what you maybe should know, and this maybe we'll cut out a little bit. And then they kind of brought that to me. Him and I sat down, talked about it, answered it completely in truth. And then we kind of had a session together where we brought it all back together and, got all of her, questions answered. And then I think at that point, all of it had been disclosed. I think it was just, kind of solidifying the truth that, what I had said was true. And, did she believe it? And then, making sure that there was a, therapist kind of mediating that a little bit.
So the disclosure's done. What did life look like in your household over the next couple of weeks?
Like a bomb went off. I mean, yeah. I mean, we weren't talking. We weren't communicating. We were sleeping in separate beds. I mean, I'm trying to think. It was around the holidays, so that was also unique because we had about 2 weeks before, and then it was, the pressure to kind of go. While we had told our family what had happened, I mean, still we're trying to make the best out of the holidays, and that just kind of felt weird. So it was just a weird kind of slimy time. I was trying to put my best foot forward and, try to finally put her first and figure out what she needed. But I knew at the time that she just needed her space. She needed to collect, talk to her loved ones, talk to the therapist. And I just continue each and every day to kind of show up and show that I was going to be accountable, for the first time in X amount of years. So, yeah, I mean, it was rough. I mean, I think they call it a roller coaster. I mean, it's a roller coaster, and I'd say today there's still roller coaster moments, but the roller coaster is definitely something that you can, I think you're equipped with the stuff that we learned to manage those days. And they're fewer and far between now than they were, in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, the circle back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said.
Hey, how do you feel like this affected your relationship with your kiddos, with your first wife, second wife, like from the standpoint of, or the emotions like in the household?
Yeah, after discovery, I think the emotions are, I can remember first marriage, and my oldest was 4 at the time, probably, so like 2 years after discovery, and still just knockdown, drag out fights. She came in and was just like, stop fighting. And it's really struck me of how can I be in that, how am I that house? How am I that house where your kid's running up to you, begging you guys to stop screaming at each other? So it was so raw, and I think the impacts have been innumerous impacts. I think from my own journey to their journey, to my ex-wife's journey, I mean, there's just so much pain. I think with my wife, current wife now, I think being able to talk through with her kids, we still had some knockdown dragouts, but they're older, so there was a conversation that was had. There was an acceptance of a responsibility taken by me, and so I think that was helpful in healing and helpful for them to be able to accept me, knowing that I'd caused their mom a bunch of pain, but she was willing to work through, to do whatever it took to work through our story to repair it. And so I think ultimately there's a bunch of glory on the other side. In the midst of it, it's just so much pain.
Were you all going to church at that time?
Which time?
Well, the pain, whatever.
So
What I'm trying to draw is this is what's going. We never saw ourselves being in that house,
Right.
But when I go to church
Right.
on Sunday morning,
Yeah.
never knew.
Right. Yes. I mean, we were Christmas, Easter in the first marriage, and this for our marriage now, it's firmly based in the faith. So
I think it's, for us, we would have those knock-out, drag-out arguments, but then when you hit the doors at church, it was, hey, we're so good, God's so good,
Right.
And it was this total face that we put on, and we see this in our own program where guys will come into the program, and what you see on Sunday morning is everything is golden. There's nothing wrong with anything, but then you just press in a little bit, and there's so much brokenness. Mm-hmm. And so many homes out there are the home that you were just talking about.
right. That's right. Well, and for a lot of guys in the program, at least for me, church was not a safe place to go to.
Sure.
And so that's a whole. I mean, just to show up after discovery, that took a minute, for my wife to really feel comfortable to go and be in that environment surrounded by other women, people. Yeah.
Why'd you join the program? I mean, I get that life kind of blew up. Let's start also with you on this one, right? Only single guy in this panel here. I mean, why?
Come on.
I guess for my story, I've seen what this addiction can bring into it, like emotionally and physically. I was in college, I was in a relationship, and I brought that addiction to that, and it turned into just a huge mess and really just an awful relationship to be in with her, to the point where we're not on good terms. And now looking back, I didn't realize it then, where it was just like, oh, we're just doing regular stuff, there's no harm in it.
That's what everybody does.
Right. I would I went to a Christian college, but my roommate would he would just watch porn just up in the living room, just normal, it's just whatever. And bringing that into that relationship and really breaking her because of what I wanted and not what she wanted, it really hurt her. And now realizing that I do not want to bring this again to my potential spouse, and getting myself right in terms of not just for her but also for myself, right? Just getting this addiction off of my back and being truly the man that God has called me to be. We've all struggled with this, but we're not identified by this addiction, right? We don't want to be the person that's 60, 70 years down the line and he's still struggling, right? We are forgiven in God's eyes, but the one thing about this program is just the whole sense of hope that it brings, the whole sense of forgiveness and love that every single person brings to the table. Like, it was the first time I really opened up to anyone, even to my family. Like, it was the first time in my life where I really just no holds barred, just spilled everything out in front of my accountability team, and they just met me with grace and love, and something that what James 5:16 says, you know, confess your sins to one another, and so that you may be healed. And just that experience of just the love and the forgiveness, like, you can know and understand God's forgiveness, but when you experience it with the people around you, it's just a whole different thing.
Yeah, I equate that with being known, right? Like, I think ultimately there's a fear that if you knew me, you wouldn't love me. And I think that's what drives the spiral of the shame. And then you come to a group like this and you're known. You are fully known and as fully loved as humanly possible. I think that's something that is really, really, really rare, and can only be found in a really safe environment, which is why you're able to share the entire story and sharing yourself. And then you live in freedom.
Yeah, I remember my first night, just like, maybe I won't say anything, and then hearing your story, and everyone else is like, man, I thought I was the worst guy.
Far from
Don't
it.
point at me.
Yeah, far from it. Far from it.
Amen.
But guys, we're all married, but looking at guys like Austin, for a long time I lived with a regret. You know, seeing a young single man in the world today doing this before he meets his wife, trying to rid himself of the sin. And what admiration we have for you. Or Andrew's a younger guy too. That, you know, I lived with kind of a festering, harbored guilt of not doing this before, but I've learned that you know, we're loved in God, and you know, my value my value is what God is in me, and that guilt that lived with me, I've been able to release, because my testimony is who I always have been, and part of who I always have been is a big fat sinner with sexual sin, and that is part of my testimony, to reach and help and teach other guys that are either my age or older or younger to, you know, do this now and not let it fester, and so you won't have the guilt to get over as another hurdle. So, yeah.
Well, you're saving yourself so much time and opening a runway of freedom for decades that you didn't have, right? Like, that's what these younger guys have.
But we have that guilt or that dirt of decades longer than Austin has. Mm-hmm. But that is our testimony.
It's part of the story.
Yeah, it's part of the story.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, there's other paths. There's different paths to get to the same place, for sure. I'd rather be on his path.
I know. Hey, it's just.
I mean, you brought up something a minute ago, or you were kind of heading down the path, the difference between shame and guilt. You were talking about guilt, but I think probably also shame was a part of that, right? And the difference between shame and guilt is, shame is, I'm a bad person. Guilt is, I did a bad thing and I feel guilty about that. And so oftentimes, I know that I did, and a lot of the guys that we work with carry this sense of great shame. Because I did these bad things, I'm a bad person. And when you step into a program like this and you become fully known, you become exposed, you become accountable, then you start to pursue other men, right? I can start to take that shame right off my back. And I can acknowledge, like you were saying, right, that I am chosen, I am created in His image, I am sanctified, I'm redeemed, and He continues to restore me each and every single day. And that's my identity. It's not my addiction. It's not the thing that I struggle with. Because when I was living in my shame, that was my identity, right? My shame. I'm a bad person. I do bad things. And then God steps in. He says, you are mine. And I want to show you that through, as you were saying, James 5:16, right? Confess your sins one to another. Pray for each other so that you may be healed. Because the prayer is power while it's working, right? And so that's what we do in community. As we become known, we become exposed, accountable, and then we pursue. We take that cloak of shame off, and we recognize, okay, maybe I've done some bad things, and I feel bad about that, and I've got guilt, and there's consequences to that.
Consequences.
But I am not that person I was before.
It's possible to exist in a world where you did those things and you're a child of God and you're redeemed and you're grace filled and you're living a life that is constantly pursuing your identity in Him.
It's an and, not a but.
That's right.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so you told us about your first day. Tell me about your experience when you finally came into group and you decided, hey, look, I'm going to do something about this. What did life start to look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it was hey, you got to go get help. You got to get into something, or like our marriage isn't going to last. So yeah, we kind of had the gun to your head type deal, right? But my first day, I walk in and I'm in a group, I think, with you, Jesse, another guy, and Heath, and I had never told my story really to anybody besides my wife at that point. So this was going to be the first time I get to be in front of a bunch of dudes and get to kind of just spill the guts. And I think what you're saying is you talk about those weights of that shame and the guilt and everything that just kind of, added up over the years. And when you get in that room and you get the chance to talk and just open it up, and then you speak, and all of it is just giving back and like, hey, man, we love you no matter what, It's, hey, you're forgiven. Hey, let's talk about this more. Let's dive deeper. All that just kind of gets thrown off your back, and it kind of gets you. I think I left and I was like excited. It's like, man, I think this is going to be not only something good, for my marriage, but this is going to be good for me and kind of help me understand maybe a little bit behind, pull back the curtain, see inside my brain a little bit, fix me. And then also, I had seen guys that had been in the group longer and, their walk with God. And it's like, man, that's super inspiring. So I think it was, hey, first day is, you're drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information. But every week I came excited thinking, man, I can't wait till we learn a little bit more. And then it's like, I take that and I get to go talk to my wife about how excited I am about it. And she can kind of see that change starting to process.
Well, there's an element of it that's like a triage, almost with everybody hands down. I feel like most of the guys walking in the first day, it's like triage. You're in the ER. Like it is, I'm bleeding out of everywhere. And I got so many cuts, and I'm wounded in every single way. Not to mention, my wife is probably still yelling at me. And I think there is that initial, okay, let's bandage up. Let's, figure out how to put some Band-Aids on for a minute just to breathe and then start to grow and heal. And, yeah, that's a good way to put that. Yeah, fire hose, for sure.
I think also learning the curriculum that we have. Throughout my whole life, I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty with the church that I was in terms of trying to deal with this type of sin, in terms of like, oh, you just gotta pray more, you gotta read the Bible more, you just gotta fast, you just gotta do this, you gotta do this. But there's just with this program, there's a whole different aspect of why we do the things that we do. There's also just like the physical aspect where in our brains with the neural pathways, how they connect and how that triggers things in terms of like the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, and just like there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? It's not just I didn't pray enough, I didn't read the Bible more. There's just a whole other thing that really kind of keeps us in our addiction. And once you understand that part and you start to renew your mind, and kind of like Romans 12:2, renewing your mind daily, you kind of start to see that fog addiction go away.
Yeah. So the transformation, and this is the second indication I'm a slow learner. Thanks, Andrew. That, when I started, I had one goal, and that was to eliminate my sexual addiction that I'd struggled with for so many years. And that was a singular goal. And if you're not giving the program what it gives you, if you're not receiving it and pouring into it, then you're going to slow roll it, and it's going to take a lot longer for you to take that information, that growth that is there for you to take home with you to build your marriage back to where it needs to be, where you left it. And for me, like I said, it was a singular goal: eliminate myself from sexual sin, and I was doing that pretty consistently. But the benefits of the program in the series, the homework, I wasn't doing the homework as I should have for probably the first couple of years, and that was obvious how our marriage didn't gain traction. My marriage was taking a back seat to my improvements in addiction. So I was doing this a lot, but I wasn't taking home with me the things that I was learning from.
If all you're doing is showing up and checking the box,
that's
exactly what you're going to get out of it.
You're going to get the good guys. You're going to get the camaraderie. You're going to attaboy, let's keep up the good work. But yeah,
you're not going to heal.
You're not going to heal.
And I think piggybacking on what you said, I think it was along with the identity, which is so important, and then you start to learn about the chemical makeup, the neural pathways, the kind of growing new links and understandings within your own brain of how the dopamine works. I mean, all of that is transformational when it comes to dealing with it and healing. I think for me, it was like a healing light bulb for me of when I started to understand that piece. Then I was like, oh man, wait, I'm 6 months in, and I actually have some new pathways that have formed. I can feel those. I can feel that I'm not firing as much as I used to on lust or whatever, and I can kind of latch onto that and really grab hold of some of the power in that, you know? Yeah.
That's where the selfishness gives way to empathy, which for me, for a lot of men, empathy wasn't a thing. I didn't feel. You deal with your own feelings. I have mine. I'm going to take care of mine and baby them. But you give away some of that selfishness, and then it opens up, like you say, the neural pathways of your mind. It physiologically changes, and you cried at your daughter's swim meet. I tear up constantly, and I just don't understand it. Yeah. But it's cool because I feel.
Right.
And before I was just numb.
But manly men would say that's weak.
I drive a big truck and work with tools.
That's my whole point. Is that I think I don't think that manly men. I think manly men do cry.
He's such more of a man today than he was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So a manly man is not a guy that doesn't feel emotion, right? That just pushes things off, that just pushes it down and moves forward. Because the problem with that is that, again, the destruction you're doing around you.
It's a coward.
In many respects, it is. Yeah. And I don't think and here's the interesting. I don't think we recognize the destruction we're doing in that. Because as we start to learn more, so we're learning these amazing things between the spiritual aspect of our addiction, the neurological aspect of the addiction, but then we start bringing in what is attachment? What does that look like? How did I learn to attach as a young person? And then based on the way I learned to attach as a young person, now that's the way I attach as an adult. So if I didn't have a father that was emotionally available, if I had a mother that was constantly, dismissive and or absent, then I learned that. And that becomes hardwired inside of me. So as an adult, what do I become? Emotionally unavailable, dismissive, absent. And I perpetuate that struggle and that chaos in the lives of the people that I'm around. My children, my spouse. And I firmly believe that's why the Bible talks about generational curse being passed down from generation to generation. Because if I'm dealing with sexual sin in my life, the thing I'm not going to talk to my children or other people about is any type of sexual sin. I'm going to stay as far away from that as possible, right? Because the thing I don't want is for Andrew to say, why? How do you know about that? Why would you say that? Have you experienced that? Are you dealing with that? Because then I got to lie again. And remember, I got to protect this secret behind me. So I just don't ever talk about it. And that's why generational sin goes from generation to generation. When we say, look, enough's enough, and it's done with me, and we recognize that that's not our identity, and that I do bad things, therefore I'm a bad... No. I do bad things, and there's consequences to those bad things. But as a Christ follower, I'm an heir and a co-heir to the throne. That is who I am. Now I can say, okay, I start living out of my identity. My heart starts to change. And I start to become free to be able to sit on a stage like this and share tons of brokenness and things that would embarrass most people. But it's not my story. It's God's story. And it doesn't define who I am. What defines who I am is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Amen.
Period. And so now I can start to love out of the capacity that God gives me, and I can start to recognize other areas of my life that are broken. And now he says, hey, Graham, look, you're dealing with this, but dude, I got this over here that I want you to deal with. I think you had one of those things in your life.
Yeah, it was, so nicotine smoking had been part of my life. My dad smoked growing up, so I started smoking because that was cool. And then when I started dating my now wife, that was a deal breaker. So I switched to vaping, which is the worst option, and from an addiction standpoint. And then I started feeling the shame of every time I would need to go buy some more. It was just like, I'm going to tell my wife I'm going to, and I hate it. And so finally I knew I needed to get rid of it, and I just turned it off. And driving home, I was like, I'm not going. And she even said, what do you mean? I was like, I'm done. And the other thing that you learn through this process is you tell the truth.
Yeah.
And your word means something. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I'm not perfect at that, but when it came to the nicotine, I dropped it. So, been nicotine free for 2 years, almost 2.5. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of the cool things is that as God's restoring our heart back to him, and we recognize that life's not all about us, now we have the capacity to do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Or before, I didn't care.
That's right. That's the least. that was just me getting in between fixes. That's all that was.
And that was a part of the way I coped.
That's right. That's right.
And so now I recognize, now I can turn to God, and I can turn to my wife and to healthy people to cope with, losing a job. How do I deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Illness, sickness, the loss of a family member. How do I deal with that? Well, I turn to the people that I love, and they help pick me up and they walk me through that time.
The understanding that you're truly just medicating, once that starts to kind of click, I feel like that was also a turning point for me. It was like, I'm literally just medicating. I'm numbing pain and also accentuating joy that I perceived.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing is medicating and taking a drug. So you got to figure out why you're medicating while you're doing the steps necessary to prevent yourself from falling back in.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's what the group's about.
3+ years.
That's right.
How long?
Right at 4.
4 years. Amazing.
Coming up on 3 in a month.
Coming up on 3 in a month. Okay. And Austin's newer into the program. Over 1,000 days sober. Over 1,400 days sober, right?
If that's the math, yeah.
Over 1,100 days sober.
That's right.
Man, that's wrong. Day one, would you have ever thought that you'd be sitting talking about, number one, exposing yourself to other people that are going to be watching this video?
Oh, no.
That's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I told myself on day one I wasn't going to be a leader. Literally, that was what I said out loud to multiple people. I'm not going to be here and be a leader. Just so you know.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, not good.
We're glad you had that failure.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it. I didn't say it, but I was thinking it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of severing the cord with that part of my brain, it was impossible. Because every man lusts. Every guy is doing this, is what I told myself. It's probably not quite far from the truth, quite frankly. But that was the justification, was I'm no worse than any other guy. But for me, it controlled my life in a way that was unmanageable and super painful.
I got a text message from one of our newer guys the other day, probably been in the program for about 30, 45 days. He said, I can't thank you and the leadership team enough. He said, I would have told you that going past 2 or 3 days would be impossible when I first joined. He said, I did not think it was going to work. He said, I can't tell you how much joy I have in my life. I mean, we're talking 30, 45 days in, not that long. He's like, but the joy I have today compared to 2 months ago, he's like, it's not even in the same ballpark. He's like, I would have told you that I could not go more than a couple days.
It's like tasting a strawberry for the first time. All of it. It is. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you haven't had that, it's true.
Yeah. Okay, so what's 1 or 2 things that you would, well, that's instrumental to you through this process? I can tell you for me, it was learning more about attachment. And the fact that, so while I love my parents, while I up until the time my dad passed away almost 3.5 years ago, he was one of my best friends by far. I love my mom completely, without reserve. That doesn't change the fact that the way I was raised, there were things that caused chaos in my life that made me then turn to this inappropriate thing over here. And I'm not persecuting them for that. It is what it is, right? I can acknowledge the fact that they tried very hard and that they loved me, and there were still things that happened that made me feel unsafe around them from the standpoint of turning to them for things, okay? So, for me, learning that the way I learned to attach as a child is the way I am now attaching to the people around me. I'm creating chaos in my children's life like was brought into my life as a child. That was a huge turning point for me, because I was sitting there thinking, I'm a pretty good person, but then looking back at my childhood and seeing how broken in certain respects it was, and how I was creating the brokenness, that was a huge pivotal moment for me. And so that made me step back and reevaluate, how am I being as a father? How am I being as a husband? How am I being as a friend? How am I being as a leader? How am I being as a business owner, as an entrepreneur? And it made me look at every aspect of my life. And that's when real change started happening. I was sober. I was doing the homework. I was leading men. But the biggest change came from recognizing how I was creating chaos in others' lives, even though I was sober, even though I was doing good. And that's what really stripped back the curtain for me and started making me recognize that there was so much more. It wasn't just about being sober. There was so much more I had to address. That was, for me, that was a big turning point. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I've already spoken a couple of things of the understanding that it's literally just a drug, and I'm just taking a drug.
Medicating.
Understanding the medicating part, and then understanding what it was doing in my brain with the neural pathways and all the stuff that Austin so eloquently laid out for us. But I think the piece that worked the best was the communication with the guys. The initial daily, weekly calls with guys. And yeah, you're connecting and you're sharing about your life a little bit, but really you're saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm sober, and this is how I'm going to stay that way. For me, that really set a foundation of being intentionally relational and known within the group. So that made me feel loved, even though they knew me, and I felt loved, and then I could succeed.
Community.
Yeah.
Love it. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, I think the hope of the neuroplasticity of the brain. I always thought, whenever I guess it happened, I was thinking, how can I ever change, right? But then understanding there was true hope and change, I think it was kind of the first thing that kind of projected me. And then after that, I think when you get into Warpath, like the second series, just the emotional empathy around communication with your wife and how to do that well. I think not only then took it from, okay, I'm doing well in my group, but how can I then take this out and, apply it to real life scenarios? And when I saw that starting to work, I was like, okay, there's something to this. And then it's gone farther. I think it just, I think hypocrisy is something I thought of forever whenever, going to church or showing up just to go to church. But now, like, I can see myself truly, like, dedicated to going to church, getting my family to church, like, truly enjoying listening in church, like, wanting to grow spiritually. So then, like, some of our book studies, like, being able just to dive in those and even learn more, not only about the book, but then some of the guys' stories, too, through those studies. So I'd say, like, that 3-part for me is, neuroplasticity, kind of real-life scenarios with Warpath, and then some of the book studies, just kind of building up community with guys, so because I truly know you, and you can have true, genuine, open conversations, and it's not just, kind of Bible study that just you touch a little topic and it's very topical. It's really true, in-depth, grit information.
Hey, give us the 30-second rundown of what is neuroplasticity. What does that mean to be neuroplastic? And why is that a benefit?
Yeah, so just like the neural pathways in your brain. Think of it as like a field of grass. You've been mowing them down constantly with, your addiction. But you're allowing that to pretty much, when you can come in here and start to learn and, grow, that you can kind of stop that. And the grass starts to grow back up. Now you have a true level playing field of grass that then you get to start to draw your own picture back into. So you're really just kind of clearing the playing field so that you can kind of regain and start to learn new things.
It's literally the healing of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, true healing.
Yeah.
So the damage I caused through my addiction can be healed because we're neuroplastic. That's exactly right. It's good. Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, I think that the initial challenge of being able to learn and not manipulate, but manipulate the thoughts that I was having previously into positive thoughts would physiologically change the neuroplasticity of my brain, where I could actually not just get past a struggle, but my brain is different, so I don't desire the things I once desired because I've trained it differently. That excited me and that challenged me, but taking it back really kind of to the family of origin, I was raised to be perfect, and anything less than, there was a barometer that was ridiculous, impossibly high. Anything less than that wasn't allowed. It wasn't welcomed. So it squashed any feeling or curiosity or desire or confusion that I had. The inability to express myself we just disallowed. So my goal was to be perfect, and this was my one area that I defined as my little box that I allowed to live in my head. That was my imperfection, and I was just going to deal with that in silence, and it was going to fester and live there forever. But now that I've gotten on the other side of that, I've identified it. You just vomit on these guys, my thoughts and feelings, and you can't hold it in. They're going to ask you questions constantly.
Why are you pointing at me?
Because that's a gift. That is one of the gifts Heath has is he's really good at pulling things out of me, and I think some of the other guys as a leader that has allowed me to grow. I'm amped up. I'm fired up. I want to get in guys' faces now and say, yeah, I'm a recovering porn addict, and then watch them just go flush. And if you're not, that guy probably is, and let's go talk to him. I mean, I'm amped up. I'm charged. So those feelings that I squashed for so long, this is who I am.
Yeah.
That's who God intended me to be, not family of origin.
That's so funny because I laugh because I'll meet guys in restaurants to talk about this for the first time, and I'm talking about pornography and masturbation and this and that, and you can just see them starting to slide out of the seat. They're trying to work their way underneath the table. You're like, what?
Yeah. The first week or two here, I think the word masturbation was said, and I thought, whoa, we're going there? Oh, we're going there.
Austin, how about you?
I guess for me, learning my arousal template was a big thing. Just coming and kind of like putting the armor on every single day, right? Having a plan. If you're gonna go to a place where a public place, and you have a set plan of being like, hey, if I see something, I know what to do, because there's a lot of times where even just at church where I would just walk in and I see some girl who's fits my arousal template and I get triggered, and then now I'm just thinking about it during the whole service. And I think learning what that is and also expressing that to my care team and having them kind of figure out a plan of like, hey, if you see so-and-so with this type of arousal template, this is what we should do, right? Mm-hmm. Not going in blind and being like, oh, if it happens, it happens.
Mm-hmm. Being intentional.
Yeah, being intentional of what you're doing. Kind of like if, like, I'm going to go to Hawaii in May, I'm going to have a whole plan of, I'm going to give out to my care team, like, if I'm going to the beach, this is what I'm going to do, this is what, if I see something, that I'll let you know. And, you know, being intentional about your sobriety is such an important thing. I think another thing was the exercise of the 10 worst moments of my life, and that diving deep into that and realizing the actual root cause of why I'm acting the way I'm acting. It's not because, I mean, kind of like how you were saying with the attachment, like, because so if my parent wasn't emotionally there for me, that's why I am acting that way. And like listing out those moments was just a big thing for me as well. So, yeah.
All right, we're running out of time here. So, what's life like at home now with Mama and you guys?
Yeah, no, it's been good. We've had 2 kids now since starting the group, and you know, we think of, I mean, we talked about it a second ago, generational sin, and you know, first was a girl, now it's a boy, and so now it's time to like stop, you know, draw that line in the sand and say, let's cut off the generational sin. You know, I know my dad struggled, I know my grandfather struggled, I'm sure great grandfather and on has struggled, so why not be the one to draw the line in the sand? And at home, it's, you know, my wife and I connect better than we ever have. I mean, we're making true marriage plans that are biblical. If it's finances, as if it's our, you know, like family being at church every weekend as possible. If it's, you know, giving, how are we tithing? How are we doing serving others? How are we giving back? You know, and I think we're connecting really well on a lot of those things. And then just, you know, I'd say like there's obviously going to be those roller coaster days. There's going to be tough days. Like there's always going to be that consequence to my sins, and you know, taking full responsibility for that is what I found to, you know, to be the best thing. And you know, I say that there's that hope for other men out there that, you know, you are going to have tough, rocky days, but there is like a light, not at the end of the tunnel, but there's definitely a light towards the tunnel. That, you know, those days are going to get easier. Your wife's going to tell you she's proud of you, that she loves you, and she's going to be very thankful that you joined this group.
Yeah. And there's going to be situations where she's triggered and you did nothing, right? And that's just life. And that's just sin. I mean, you're talking about sexual sin, but that's just sin in general, right? And so I may do something that has nothing to do with any kind of sexual sin, but that triggers this traumatic feeling inside of me as the wife. And it takes me back to that traumatic moment. And now the beautiful thing is that I can process that quicker, and you're not denying, you're not escaping, you're not running, you're not isolating, you're still present. You're sitting there saying, man, honey, I feel you, and I'm sorry you feel that way, and how can I be there for you? And that helps re-regulate her. That helps her recognize, okay, he loves me. I can be crazy. And we can all be crazy. I'm not just saying women are crazy. We're all crazy, right? But I can be crazy in my sin and know that the person still loves me, and they're gonna hold my hand, and say, "Baby, it's all good. Let's go through this together." And that didn't happen before, right? Jeremy, how about you? How's life like today?
Oh, see this emotion. Yeah, it is. It's a first honeymoon. We met in church. My wife met me under false pretenses. And one of the first things she said to me when we were getting to know each other was, if we're going to get married, you're the leader. It's not my job to lead this family. Third indicator, I'm a slow learner. 21 years later, 23 years of marriage in a month. We have come together through Christ, and the man that she thought she got, I'm finally turning into that man. And she's had patience and endurance and a willingness and desire and need and thirst to follow this guy. And it's taken a while to get here, but yeah, she's lit up too. We're doing Bible studies and we're praying together at night, things that you want to do, you think you ought to be doing, but as that neuroplasticity changes, the desires to grow and learn about God. I mean, I enjoy opening the Bible now and learning stories that they were topical for most of my life. Digging into those, oh, well, that's who these people are, and it's always been there. And I have a wife that was full of more grace than I deserved. But we're honeymooning now.
So the other beautiful thing about what's going on in your life is that God used this addiction. And I love your precious wife. She's amazing. But God used this addiction to get her attention and address something that she needed to address in her life as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I don't think, what the devil means for evil, for destruction, for mayhem, if we allow, God is going to use that for his good. And he's used this in her life to get her attention so that she would shed the thing that was holding her captive. And that's, God chose, my firm belief is God chose to use this to get her attention. Could he have done it another way? Absolutely. But he chose to use this sin. So as hard as it is, God still uses it for amazing things.
Yeah, bigger, bolder, more powerful through both of our struggles. The testimony that we have, we hope to share and help other people.
Amen.
It's pretty good, I gotta say. It is real. It's authentic. I know that I'm fully known by my wife, which is a shocking thing to be able to say. To be fully known by your wife, who's your best friend, and in it, she's in the weeds and passionate for me and our story and the strength that I'm bringing to the table. She hates the trailer that I put on her back, but she loves the man that I'm becoming. And so our household is filled with peace and a knowledge of our identities together and prayer. And it's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
So the non-married man, what's life like for you right now?
I think ever since joining this program, I really fully believe and understand the grace of God. I think the first time in my life ever, I had a lot of knowledge and belief on it, but the thing was, with this sin, I had a lot of shame in it, and kind of not forgiving myself because I'm doing this thing on the side. How can I be a Christian, right? And just feeling the grace and the love from you guys made me experience the true grace that God has given us. And it's just so freeing. And yeah.
All right, silly question, rapid fire, because we got to get rolling here. Was it worth it?
Yes, 100%.
What's what worth it?
All the hard work.
Oh, good gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
Would you do it? Would you change anything over the last however many years you've been a part of the program?
Well, I've indicated several times I'm a very slow learner.
You'd be a
Besides,
faster learner.
besides the slow learning.
Anything differently?
Yeah, I mean, would you? Yeah.
Challenge myself more.
Okay,
That's it.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Worth the fight.
Yeah, worth the fight. I mean, I think there's something to finding victory
Amen.
and what that does to your soul, you know. And I think, and then that just translates into your mind of like, I can do this, and that's. It feels like if I can do that, man, we can get through just about anything. So yeah.
Worth the fight.
100%. I don't like the journey to how I got here, but I'm grateful for it.
What's one thing you would tell somebody that is thinking about, do I really need to do this?
Yeah, no, don't drag your feet. I mean, if you are in a position where you haven't told your wife, if you haven't disclosed, you haven't been discovered, it's going to happen. Why not get out in front of it and do it the right way with the program backing you? Like, don't wait for everything to blow up in order to start this group.
Yeah.
You take the initiative and do it, and it'll be 1,000 times worth it.
I mean, the fact of the matter is 80% plus of the guys get discovered. The 20% that come clean, I think have a much better journey, a much faster journey.
It is.
And so, yeah, I agree with that.
Because not only are you a liar, but you're a deceiver, right? You're doing all this thing over here, plus you're deceiving me. And that's oftentimes the worst part of it, was the lying and the deception, right? What's one thing you'd tell somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to ditto what Andrew said. It's not a question. It's of, do you need to do it? It's now, right now. Push pause and go do it. Because if history is an indicator of what you're going to do tomorrow, you're going to wake up and pursue the same journey that you've been on, that's been dragging you down for so many years. And you don't realize, right now, you don't realize what you can realize in a year or 2 years or 3 years of sobriety.
Absolutely.
How many times did you make the deal, I won't do this ever again?
Can't
many
count. Yeah.
It's one thing.
I think, I mean, I'll say what I said before. Aren't you just so tired?
Yeah.
Aren't you just so tired of doing the same thing over and over again, having the same result? Like, it's time to do something different.
One thing.
I would say any stage of life, there's no time to waste, right? Even with me being a single guy, the broken stories that I've heard of guys bringing that into their marriage and your potential spouse, right? You don't want to have that be part of your story. And that's what I've been told by so many of the guys there, is like, I wish I was in your spot.
And there's a way to have it not be part of your story.
Right.
And this is the way.
But you're never too old.
That's right.
You're never too young.
Hallelujah.
You're never too broken. You're never too right with God. If I am doing something knowing that what I'm doing is creating chaos in my life or in somebody else's life, I have a problem. And I need to hit it head on. And I need to say, today is the last day. And I need to reach out and I need to do something. Because guess what? Tomorrow never comes. If you wait till tomorrow, it won't ever come.